Alright guys, we're diving into lesson 9. Lesson 9 we're going to combine quotient rule and power to a power. So remember quotient rule, that means we're dividing, but when we divide that means we subtract our exponents, and then power to a power is when we have our parentheses and we multiply exponents. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start with number 1. Okay, so with number 1 I want to point out a few things. And the first thing I want to point out is this 0 power. Okay, well we know that if we're taking something to a power 2 power, we have to multiply. So that means we'd multiply both of these exponents by 0. But what do we know about 0? It gets us 0, right? And anytime you have an exponent that's 0, it gets us 1. So what happens to the numerator is it just turns into 1, because a to the 0 power is 1 and b to the 0 power is 1. And then on our denominator, that stays the same. So I've got my b and then a to the negative 1. Okay, well remember we don't want negative exponents in our answers, so the last thing we have to do is just take care of that negative exponent. So we've got that a to the negative 1 on the bottom, but if we want to make it positive, we have to change the location. So because it's on the bottom, we need to make it on positive and put it on the top. So my final answer for this problem would be a to the first power, or 1a to the first power, over b. And that's my final answer. Okay, so again, we saw that the exponent was 0. That gives us 1. And then we move those negative exponents. All right, on to number 2. Okay, so for number 2, we got to take a look at the numerator and the denominator and see if we can do a power to a power, because that's what has to be done first before you can use quotient rule. So if we're looking at the denominator in this problem, we've got a power to a power. We've got that 2x inside parentheses, and outside we've got that 3. So remember, the first thing we have to do is make sure everything has an exponent. So I'm going to put a 1 with the 2, and I'm going to put a 1 with the x. So that way, when I take my power 3 to each thing, I know what to multiply by. So multiplying by 1, multiplying by 1. So my new denominator would be 2 to the third, because 3 times 1 gets me 3. And then same thing with the x. 1 times 3 gets me 3, so I'd have x cubed. Okay, my numerator stays exactly the same because there's nothing to multiply there. So I'll have my x squared, and I'll have my y squared. Okay, so once you're here, we have to kind of break down each part and see what we can divide and simplify. So on the numerator, we see we have an x and a y, and on the denominator we have a 2 and an x. So let's start by focusing with these x's. Okay, so I've got x squared on top, x cubed on bottom. So that means I'm going to go 2 minus 3. So x to the 2 minus 3 gets me negative 1. And then my y squared is going to stay the same because there's nothing to simplify. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring over that 2 to the third power, or 2 cubed. Okay, so our last step is to take care of negative exponents and evaluate the number. So our negative exponent here is this x to the first, or negative 1. We're going to bring that to the bottom to make it positive. So on my numerator, I'm left with y squared. And then on the denominator, I have this 2 to the third, so 2 times 2 times 2, which gives us 8. And then I'll bring down that x to the first power for my final answer. So yes, these are getting a little bit more challenging, but keep trying. Keep doing the best you can. Okay, number 3. Number 3, we're taking a look at power to a power first, seeing if we can handle that, and that's on the denominator. So remember, everything needs an exponent, so that 2 needs an exponent. So let's take that 4 and multiply by each exponent. So I'm going to have 2, 1 times 4 gets me 4, so 2 to the fourth. And then I'm going to have, let's see, v, 3 times 4 gives me 12 on the denominator. Notice, on the numerator, we have something to the 0 power, which gets us 1. So that's gone. So I'm just going to have my 2u squared. Okay, so the last thing I have to take care of is the 2's. Okay, well, what you could do is find out what 2 to the fourth is, and that gets us 16. So right now, my fraction, I've got 2u squared on top, and I've got 16v to the 12th on the bottom. Okay, well that's great, but I still need to simplify my numbers. So I can go 2 divided by 16, which gets me 1/8. So I'm going to have 1u squared on top, and then 8v to the 12th on the denominator. And that's my final answer. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going on to number 4. Okay, so for number 4, again, we're going to look and see if we've got a power to a power. We want to take care of that first. And we do, again, on the denominator. So we'll make sure that everything has an exponent. So the x needs a 1. And now let's go ahead and take that 2 and multiply each number by that. So let's see, x to the 1 times 2 gets me x squared. And y to the negative 4 times 2 gets me y to the negative 8. 8, there we go. Okay, so then on the numerator, that's just staying the same. So I've got the 2y and then x squared. All right, so now we can start simplifying using the quotient rule, which means subtract. So the first thing I notice is that we have an x squared on the top and an x squared on the bottom. Well, 2 minus 2 gets me 0, so these just cancel out. Okay, so these are gone. The next thing I want to take care of is that negative exponent in the denominator. So that negative exponent is y to the negative 8. Well, I'm going to pop that to the top to make it positive. So now I've got 2y and then y to the 8th. Okay, but notice we've got multiple y's on the top now, so we have to combine those. So if you've got 1y and then 8 more, that means you'll have 2y to the 9th as your final answer. All right, let's keep going, looking at number 5. Okay, so for number 5, the power to power is to everything inside parentheses. Okay, so we're going to make sure that everything has an exponent first. So the top is good, the bottom just needs that x needs 1. So then now let's take that negative 1 and multiply it by each exponent on the top and the bottom. Okay, so on the numerator, negative 4 times negative 1 gets me y to the 4th. On the denominator, I've got x to the 1 times negative 1, which gives me negative 1. And then y to the negative 4th. Okay, so we've got our answer here, but we're not quite done because we've got some negative exponents. And let's take care of those first. So on the denominator, we've got an x to the negative 1, which needs to go to the top to be positive, and we've got a y to the negative 4, which needs to go to the top to be positive. So right now on the numerator, I've got an x to the 1st power, I've got a y to the 4th power, and another y to the 4th power. But we're not done yet because we have to combine our y's. Okay, if I've got 4 y's and I got 4 more y's, that means I still have 1 x, but then I have 8 y's. And that's my final answer. All right, we have one more left, and problems like these are my absolute favorite because if you notice, the power to power on the outside is just 1. Or it's not 1, it's 0, excuse me. So if we take it to everything, so again, if everything has an exponent, okay, well 1 times 0 gets me 0, negative 2 times 0 gets me 0, okay, 1 times 0 gets me 0, 3 times 0 gets me 0, so all of this is to the 0 power, and we know that anytime you get to the 0 power, it gets you 1. So my final answer here is 1. So again, if you see a 0 power on the outside of parentheses and it's multiplying everything, your final answer is just 1. Okay, so try the best you can on this worksheet. We will have a test this week, but don't worry, it won't be too challenging. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm proud of you guys. Keep up the good work.